Welcome everyone, and thanks for tuning in to ANA Webinar Wednesdays. Today's presentation is Voice Search, Chatbots, and AI, What's Next by Dan Golden from Be Found Online. Dan, please take it away.
All right. Thank you everybody for joining, and today I'm going to get started here. All right, just a little bit about me up front. President and Chief Search Artist at Be Found Online. Little word to everybody: when you start a company, you can give yourself your own title. I've been 15 years very passionate about all things paid search and SEO. Here's a picture of me. I know this is a webinar, but I figured it would always be good to see a face. I'll quickly answer the question, what's with the orange jacket? It's not just a jacket. It's not just something I live. This is a picture of my car, an orange car with orange tinted windows, and this is the 50 Shades of Orange shrine sitting outside my office here in Chicago. So I'm also very passionate about all things voice search and the things that you can do with all of these fun devices. This is actually a video. It's not working with Adobe, but in this video I can tell Google Home to turn on that 1954 jukebox I have in the corner of my house, and I've got a lot of other really fun stuff automated with Alexa, with Google Home. I have it hooked up to our project management system. I'm having a lot of fun geeking out on all this stuff. So hopefully that'll come across today during the webinar, and really excited to dig into some of this stuff. Really quick, I've only got one slide about BFO. We're a digital marketing agency based out of Chicago. We've got about 40 people in the U.S., 20 in London. We were the #1 best place to work in 2016, number 6 in 2017, but I like that first one better. We do everything digital marketing other than building websites. So, all right. Before I dive in, a little bit of a warning. So CES was last week, and I've been feverishly trying to gather new information about what's changing in the marketplace, what we think is coming next, and what was announced literally in the last 72 hours. So what is it? It is January. Whatever date this happens to be in January, this presentation will self-destruct probably by the time you. A lot of exciting things are happening in the space. We're seeing a lot of movement, a lot of new technology, a lot of new integrations between a lot of these platforms. And it's a bit of a mess right now in terms of the overall ecosystem and how much we see changing and how quickly we see everything changing. So that's just my disclaimer that we're going to certainly see a lot of changes over the coming year and over the coming years in this space. So taking a quick step back and just talking about the overall evolution of search marketing and search results and what we've seen. At a high level, search is no longer just a page full of blue links. Google's mission when they first came out was that Google was not going to be a destination. It was only going to be a traffic cop to get you from A to Z. And what we've seen evolving over the years is that the search results are obviously becoming a lot more rich with different types of information, not just indexing websites, and really that move from a page of blue links to a lot more interactive content. And so the foundation of some of these changes I think are really important to understand as we talk about some of the evolution of search into the voice space, into all these alternative screens and other ways that consumers are interacting with the search results. So these screenshots get a little bit tough to read as you're staring at them. And in fact, the screenshot on the right, mobile screenshot, when you look at it in its entirety, is actually, it barely fits on the page. It's comical. So I split it up, and that's one continuous page. And if you kind of dissect all of the different areas, so coming from an agency standpoint, we often have clients that say, I want to be on the top of Google. And what does that really mean, right? We have paid ads on top, you have organic results, you have apps that are getting indexed, especially on mobile, you have news, you have the local 3-pack or evolving local pack, and local is integrated in all sorts of different ways. You've got the knowledge graph and knowledge panel, and then more organic results. So it's become increasingly complex for marketers to understand what your goals really are in the search results, and how to decode what's the value of being in search in each one of these different positions, and what happens to that value when you're asking Siri or Google Assistant, and there's one result, and that's some of the big changes that we've seen. So, going to decode some of the overall themes that I think we're going to cover today, especially as it relates to search and SEO. And this is good news for a lot of marketers trying to get their heads around how to tackle opportunities, and that is that good SEO is good SEO for voice. And so understanding how Google is understanding information and where they pull answers from and how to optimize your site for some of these more rich search results is really going to position your brand in the right place as voice evolves and as consumers evolve the way that they interact with search results. So we'll go through a lot of this today. I know there are a lot of questions of how do we do this, what's different about voice versus text input, and I've got some theories and a lot of data and a lot of ideas, and frankly nobody really knows exactly how things are going to shake out, but we have a lot of good indications of where things are going and what marketers need to be thinking about today to position yourselves for the next years as search keeps moving. So one of the big changes we've seen in SEO, again, along that theme of no longer just a page full of blue links, is rich results. And rich results is actually, Google finally branded it. There were a lot of different ways that we called these different types of rich results is the new term. I'm using air quotes if you guys could see me. And so what this means is that Google doesn't want to send people to a web page to then dig around a page and try and find the content. Google wants to understand the content of those pages and be able to present that more intelligently to the consumer. So courses, if you're if you're a school or if you have classes, there's ways that you can inform the search results, and that result is much better. It lists not just a page that says, hey, come to our site and learn about our classes, and as keyword terms get a little bit more long tail and descriptive, Google wants to show the exact classes that someone's looking for. Likewise for, recipe. So from the images, rich results, a descriptive term for what the search results are looking like. Pulling in review events is another thing that, all right. So hopefully the last little bit that I was talking through was some of that came across. I'll just quickly summarize. Rich results is kind of the new level of SEO, where Google is trying to understand exactly what's on the page and presenting a more rich search experience. And this really is going to come into play as voice search and Google's trying to find one answer. The websites that Google trusts and the websites that Google can understand are going to be the ones that win in this new era of one result, or that one winner that consumers are expecting when they search. So another thing, quick. So voice queries, and we'll get to some stats around that a little bit later. Google doesn't want you to go to click on a website to find the answer, right? They want to enter the trusted source and bring that directly into the search results. And of course, as we think about the voice interface and how consumers are going to interact, very obvious, if you're winning in the quick answers, that's going to position your brand to win as the interfaces change and as consumers are expecting one answer, right? As you think about it, if you're searching in your phone or using voice, you're not necessarily hoping to get a full page of results. You want an answer. You want something more immediate. Featured snippets. Another thing Google is doing to extract information from web pages and present that data as answers, right? So trying to shorten the path between a consumer searching and finding the answer that they want. For marketers and for brands, and certainly for websites and web properties that rely on Google for traffic, this is potentially catastrophic. Actually, the website behind this, it was celebritynetworth.com. Once Google started indexing their site and using their data for featured snippets, their traffic cut in half. They laid off 90% of the company. So it's very important to think about all of these trends, and certainly within the context of your business model and the way that search results are changing. Certainly from an agency standpoint, where we do a lot of We love to track everything that happens. We love to track, traffic analytics. We need to think about search differently when with the growth of rich results and featured snippets, because customers who get that answer, they get that impression, they get the answer, they see your brand, but they don't necessarily want to click on your website to find that answer. So the way that we track SEO performance, things like visibility and the number of featured snippets and rich results that a brand is able to obtain, we need to measure that differently, because presence matters, visibility matters, but it doesn't always lead to the same amount of traffic. And that's one of those trends that as marketers that rely on a lot of organic search traffic, Google's potentially taking some of that traffic away and presenting that data to consumers not within the confines of your website, but directly within the search results. And just figured it was worth showing a screenshot from Bing. Bing's doing a lot of the same things. You'll hear me say Google a lot, but there's a lot of platforms out there, and frankly, between y'all and me, I think actually the Bing results featured snippet for that same search query is a little bit more valuable to the searcher. All right. So moving beyond search, the AI landscape, and I am learning this stuff. There are scientists that could explain every part of this ecosystem and how it all works, but I thought this graph from HubSpot, I think, does a really good job of just kind of summarizing and decoding what falls under this AI landscape. So you have some very sophisticated machine learning platforms, IBM, Watson, all of the technology behind autopilot and self-driving cars. And the more mainstream stuff, so personal assistants and chatbots, are actually really simple. And for brands that are just trying to get their heads around, how do I get into this, or how do we take a first step? The good news is some of these connected apps and certainly natural language processing and chatbots are really close to the mainstream, and they're actually not that complicated. And so that's good news for brands looking to dip their toes in and to start building some infrastructure around this new ecosystem that brands are going to have to navigate. So in terms of other things that we're expecting to see AI having an effect within marketing, so recommendation engines, so personalization of product placement and personalized web experience, a lot of that is built based off of AI and understanding what you know about customers, audiences, previous interactions with the brand, and then customizing brand experiences for them. Visual search, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the advancements we're seeing there. Visual might be bigger, as big or bigger than voice in the next few years, and a lot of folks aren't really talking about that. Targeting, so leveraging AI to figure out who those targets really need to be. So a lot of brands that rely on assumptions or on targeting women ages 25 to 35. With AI platforms, you can get a lot smarter and a lot more tactical, and it helps scale a lot of the one-to-one marketing that is that works, that resonates with customers. And then you have chatbots and voice technology, which we'll be focusing more on today. So when we talk about the voice stack, there's a lot of different pieces to it. A lot of folks think about devices or the different, and it's an ecosystem, right? You have some ecosystem services that it's really just a very fresh and new industry of platforms that are trying to connect the dots between all of the different pieces of the stack. You've got applications that are built specifically for voice, and we've got some really fun examples of some brands that I think are doing a great job of this later in the presentation. You've got the AI software, and then you have all the hardware, right? So hopefully coming out of the presentation today, and I've got a lot of stuff I'm going to cover here, you all can leave with at least a more in-depth understanding of the ecosystem and some of the things brands are doing, and be able to talk the talk. So speaking of talking the talk, right, there's a lot of things. We use the term voice search, but it's not all search. There's search, there's voice actions, and there's voice-connected apps. There's a lot of different ways where the interface is voice that are fundamentally different in terms of what the customer is expecting. So
Let's peel the onion back a little bit more. So voice search, and when you think about, or at least what the data tells us, what a lot of people are asking are very, very simple questions. It's a definition. It is math. It is a stock price. It's the weather. As much as us as marketers like to solve really complex challenges, from a consumer standpoint, what they're asking Alexa and Google Assistant are typically very simple things: performing a task, finding a definition of a word, asking about a recipe. It's not very sophisticated what consumers are using, at least in terms of the mainstream. And I've got some stats on that coming up. We obviously have the virtual assistants, setting alarms, performing actions, and then really voice actions. So, telling the phone, turn on Bluetooth, turn on the flashlight, performing actions with voice remote at home, and I can never go back. I was visiting my folks over the holidays, and they have the old version. Clicking and navigating the menu and trying to type on an old TV remote was the most frustrating experience I've ever had. Actually, the flight out with 2 toddlers was more frustrating, but that was the second most frustrating thing I've ever done, going back to a remote after I've been trained to use Comcast Voice Remote. And so that's one of the things, is a lot of this new technology seems to be for early adopters, but a lot of it is actually, it has utility. It's easier. It's a better user experience, and it's actually a lot less complicated. So this is a screenshot from Amazon. So voice actions, it can mean a lot of different things, from calling, getting news information, the Q&A stuff. The fun and games apps, yes, I can have Alexa tell me a joke. Occasionally they're funny. And so there's a lot of kitsch with some of these tools, but there's actually a lot of utility, especially as we get into Alexa skills in the bottom right. And that's where I think a lot of brands have opportunities to jump right in. So when we think about on the flip side of that, voice search, in a lot of cases, voice input search is not all that different than someone typing. So there are certainly some differences in terms of the length of keyword phrases, but surprisingly, when we kind of decode it, text and voice, very similar in terms of the curve, in terms of the number of words. In general, we'll find that natural search or natural voice search queries are longer, a little bit more complex, and typically have more questions built in. And so decoding that again from a marketer standpoint in terms of what is most valuable, I just saw a comment, irony, the voice search presentation with poor audio. So when we talk about search query structure, it's important to decode, and especially as marketers are trying to prioritize content, whether it's for paid ads or FAQ content, of interest versus action. This is a great graph from Moz, and when we kind of parse through some of our clients' data, it becomes very apparent to segment where's top of the funnel versus bottom of the funnel, and where to focus first. Obviously, where we can capture action. So anybody searching where is much more in line to take action, to go to a local business. So that's one thing we look at when we're kind of prioritizing. So I'm going to breeze through some numbers. Again, I spent most of the past couple weeks kind of trying to find the most current, because in a lot of cases, if I'm presenting data from early 2017, it's way off. There's a lot of changes, and the marketplace is moving very quickly. In terms of voice-first device output, insane growth over 2017. 2017, there's kind of been the joke in the industry over the last decade that every year is the year of mobile. 2017 was definitely the year of voice, where a lot of this stuff went from being kitsch or from early adopters to really joining the mainstream. Some predictions, lots of different predictions, but a general consensus, I've seen this from multiple sources, and intuitively it makes sense, that by 2020, half of searches are going to be initiated by voice. Image search being the other side of that, as we think about Apple just dipping their toes in augmented reality, image search is going to be behind that. And as SEOs that have spent a lot of time trying to optimize images so they show up in Google Images, we actually have to flip that when we think about what we're really trying to accomplish. And it's not about necessarily optimizing your pictures so they show up in the search results. It's optimizing your image content so that the search engines understand exactly what that is. So when someone's taking a picture of your product, Google's going to be able to decode and find the product listing and send someone so they can buy it. So right now, about 1 in 5 searches are initiated on voice. It's a little bit higher on Android devices. I think it's about 25% of searches on Android are voice input. This was a study from Sear Interactive last year, and just kind of reiterates that a lot of what people are doing within voice are very simple things: dictating text, quick facts and jokes, playing music. A lot of the real promise that I think is there for brands, consumers are still doing very simple tasks, and that's one of the biggest pieces of advice that we always start with is customers, and to automate that complicated function, gen forms. Some of that is for consumers to trust or to want to go through that whole process through voice interface. But stuff like, all right, just a quick survey. It says the audio is cutting out again, and I'm hearing now it's back and sounding okay. So I'm going to go with the consensus again. Apologies. Yes, I get the irony that a presentation on voice results, voice search is having some audio issues. So right now, in terms of the research, this was just at the end of last year. So trying to find the freshest content, about 46% of Americans use digital voice assistants. That's huge. That growth is huge. It was, I believe, in the teens in 2016. So a lot of momentum. The ones that I just thought this was a little bit interesting. A lot of folks are not interested in it. My guess is as the technology catches up, we're going to see much faster adoption. So quick breakdown of the ecosystem of devices. So smart speaker ownership, 7% of households in 2016. The prediction by 2020 is going to be 75% of households. And given some of the evolution that it's not just about smart speakers, I actually think percent is underestimating. And again, what are people using it for? General questions, weather, streaming music. It's all really simple stuff right now. So when we talk about smart home devices, so Google Home versus Alexa has been the dominant players in the space. Alexa or Amazon Echo and Amazon were taking it to Google, but this was the latest version. This was actually produced this month. That Google now has about 25% market share in Google Home. And in terms of the overall usage of Google Assistant, smart home devices or the Google Home speaker is actually a really small chunk of Google's market share because, of course, everybody has Android phones, or a lot of people do. So this is a specific pie chart, but Google actually has a much larger share of the market when we look at all of the personal assistant usage. So Amazon, I just thought this Farm Fresh speaker devices was funny, but it's not just about Google, right? So Apple, their home speaker was supposed to be released over Q4. It was delayed, but they're going to be making a very strong push to get into this game. Microsoft has had an approach with Cortana, so they aren't producing their own devices, but they're building Cortana into other brands. Are basically using that as a platform. This one, I usually do this as a survey. The fastest growing home speaker in the world. Most people try and guess it's a new answer. Is actually the Ling Long Ding Dong. It is the fastest growing speaker. It's been off the shelves in China. And that's another thing that, especially over the later part of 2018 and 2019, as the technology becomes more pervasive,
we're expecting to see a lot of cheap home speakers as the technology becomes more accessible. We're going to see a flood of smart home devices coming into the market from every direction, and that's where I feel like it's really going to go mainstream. And it's not just about speakers. So, you know, you do have some other branded speakers, but thermostats and lamps, everything is going to have a smart chip in it, moving very quickly. And again, it's not about voice. So Amazon, the Echo Look, can actually take pictures of your outfits. And again, some of these things I think are fun for us early adopters to talk about. But where I really think it's going to go mainstream, Google Lens, and this is kind of speaks to that image search and image optimization, that recognizing, so this is augmented reality in practice, right? Recognizing physical objects and mapping those to their digital counterparts is going to be how people are experiencing search results. This, I think, is probably the biggest, you know, was yet another Google product announced last year, but I think as this becomes mainstream, and it's currently only available in a few select Pixel phones, this is where I think is going to fundamentally change the way consumers interact with the search results. And so a new category of smart screen. So again, the voice interface with a different brand of screen. It's not a tablet. It's not a laptop. It's not a mobile device. Google, and this is fresh from CES last week, launched a partnership with Lenovo. So Google seems to be less focused on building their own devices here, and are leveraging partnerships with other companies, again, trying to make their Google Assistant more of a platform and not just relying on Google selling their own devices. Google Assistant is now going to be on Android Auto, and Alexa is just announced a partnership with Toyota to bring Amazon Alexa to Toyota and Lexus cars. So a lot of this stuff is very fresh. There's going to be announcements like this every day and every week as the ecosystem matures, and the dominant platforms and winners are going to start, I think, relying less on their own devices and more about integrations with other platforms. And it's not just about voice input. This is the Kohler, I forgot the brand name, but this is Kohler's new toilet announced last week, and yes, you can tell Alexa to tell Kohler to flush your toilet. It is 2018. It was about time we actually had a smart toilet on the market. I just thought that one was funny, so I had to put that in there. So the next piece of the ecosystem are the assistants. So this is Michael Richards when he was the secretary for Murphy Brown. But virtual assistants, there is a battle right now between all of the major platforms to grow their share of the virtual assistant market. In terms of predictions, continued growth is expected. And right now it's just a battle between Google, Apple, Microsoft to acquire customers and integrate the more platforms and calendars and brands that can integrate with those platforms are just going to become more and more sticky. So we've got our Google Assistant, Siri, who everybody knows, Cortana. When I give this presentation live, I usually have a little quiz. This is Amazon Alexa. Most people, Samsung has actually done some really cool innovation in terms of Bixby. And then we've got this guy, Oslo, by Facebook, as they're trying to get into the messaging game. They actually just announced 2 days ago that they're less focused on the Messenger app. They've been piloting a lot of things. And here's a new one, Alice from Yandex. So this isn't just a trend happening here in the U.S. So next, this is really the fun stuff. So I'm going to go through some examples of some brands that I think have done a good job and some opportunities. And again, my goal today is to present a lot of information. And I know there's a very diverse audience of brands. So hopefully a handful of things, one or two things that I talk about today or next, triggers something or some sort of idea that that you guys can bring back to your companies and put into action this year. So this is the first Alexa hack. This is from a couple years ago where they programmed the Alexa to make a talking skeleton. This makes no sense for brands, but it always gave me a chuckle. This is Alexa hack number 2, where you can actually get your Amazon Echo and your Google Home to argue in perpetuity by placing OK Google on your Amazon shopping list. Not recommended. I find them annoying enough having both of these assistants in my house, but it's certainly certainly funny. So Google tried, and this was a little bit over a year ago, and they backtracked, but there was an ad, a promo for Beauty and the Beast that played after someone searched, and they caught it on Twitter, and there was a bunch of industry uproar. But at some point, these platforms need to monetize I was going to say the eyeballs, but monetize all of the activity. So, it was only a matter of time. This hasn't rolled out yet, but Amazon is most definitely in talks with a lot of retailers about if it can advertise and monetize voice ads. And that can come to life in a number of different ways, and I'll include some ideas at the end about kind of where I feel it's going and what the advertising opportunities are going to look like. Another, any sort of, whether within podcasts or even voiceover interactive ads, these voice platforms that are always on are going to be able to enable ad experiences where customers can respond and the ad, whether it's saying you want to skip the ad or saying you want to request more information or have them email you with details. So that's one way that we're definitely expecting monetization of using AI in some of these voice platforms. Domino's, I would say, is one of the first to market, and they built some really cool integrations. It started, a decision of the company that they're no longer a pizza company. They're an e-commerce company that happens to sell pizza. And that, the number of innovations. So I don't know if anybody's played with IFTTT. It is phenomenal the number of things and the cool ways that you can connect apps. So with Domino's, if you've got a smart lamp on your front porch, I have this. You can actually have it turn on your lamp when the pizza is out for delivery. If you've got connected sprinklers, you can shut off the sprinklers 5 minutes before the delivery is expected. So lots of different ways that you can customize your experience. Check out what Domino's is doing. Even category, it will definitely give you a lot of ideas of of the way brands can take advantage of this stuff. And don't be afraid to follow. So Pizza Hut was a little bit later to market, but you can now order pizzas directly through Messenger. A little funny side anecdote, Ramon De Leon, if anybody's familiar with him, he was owned a Domino's franchise. There were a few franchises in Chicago, and in the late 90s, he was actually on ICQ and AOL Instant Messenger taking orders over chat. So the original human, actually, it's really exciting to see technology catching up and scaling some of the stuff that he's been doing for the last 20 years. All right, so iRobot. So talking to your robots, again, a lot of these home products and consumer goods are, as the cost comes down of a lot of these chips, it's my expectation that in the next everybody on the line will own a smart toaster. It will be table stakes. Any sort of product that you plug into a wall will have a smart enabled chip, an IoT enabled chip that can connect to either the home ecosystem or to Amazon. All of these electronic devices are going to be connected. You can argue how much utility there is in a smart toaster, but we expect this to be the trend. It's already the trend, but we expect this to be bordering on mainstream in the next 5 to 10 years. Talk to your driver. So I use this. I've got Uber hooked up in both Google Assistant and on Alexa. And
just provides utility. As I'm running out of the house, you know, gives me time to hug the kids with both my hands instead of staring at an app. All right, talk to your dryer. So smart appliances. Right now, they're so expensive versus the other stuff out there. It's not recommended, but again, fully expect that to be, you know, table stakes with new devices over the coming years. A client of ours, European Wax Center, they have a great online booking app. So you can reserve an appointment as you're walking out the door without, you know, ask for availability and book an appointment directly with voice. Nobody likes calling and talking to people. I certainly don't. And the more, again, as brands, the more that you can automate, the more friction you can reduce, and the easier you can make things for your customers is going to put you in a winning place. So 1-800-Flowers, you can now order flowers directly through Messenger. And there's a lot of different brands that have built integrations with Google Assistant. I've got a screenshot. It's a little further in the deck, but as recently as this past week, Google actually started reaching out to publishers about building integrations with Google Assistant. And it's very rare that Google will actually say, specifically do this. And so for marketers, when Google's asking for something, if you can jump on that, my guess is Google's going to give preferential treatment to brands that have integrations with Assistant. So get started, and again, think about some of the ways that your customers can interact with your brands. And here's another fun one for us marketing nerds. The Google Analytics app, you can now ask questions about your data, and Google will spit back answers. So in terms of what were the sales last month, or what are their top referring sites, Google's now starting to understand natural language questions within the analytics platform. All right, now I'm going to talk about some more of a playbook in terms of marketers. If you're drinking the Kool-Aid and you want to get started, here's some ideas and some tactics that you can take back to your team to start implementing today. So before we start talking about apps and tactics and how you can actually do this stuff, start with some very simple questions, right? What platforms are most important to your customers? What are the most used actions and features, right? If you have a program, are they printing coupons? Are they rebooking? Is it prescription refills? You know, what are your most loyal customers ask for, and how can you promote repeat purchase behavior? So if it's very complicated to onboard a new customer or a new client, maybe that's not the best thing to build an Alexa skill for. But if you have some repeat purchase behavior or ways that your customers are constantly interacting with the brand, that's a great way to start. That's a great place to start, right? Reduce friction and go after the low-hanging fruit. You don't have to solve every complex problem with a voice app in 2018. All right, so here's the action plan. So start with the research, especially for retail brands that have a brick-and-mortar presence, local. FAQ, I'll spend a good chunk of time talking about schema and then some of the opportunities with connected apps. So a couple of tools that we like to use here. Of course, we put on the trusty Google keyword tool, but BuzzSumo has some really great products that will look at questions on Quora, Reddit, alternative sites. And my favorite is Answer the Public. So this is a free tool to the.com and put in a search phrase. And this slide is totally meta. It's a voice search slide, questions about voice search. I think the universe just exploded here. But it's an amazing tool, and you can actually export this data into a CSV, and it pulls questions that people are asking. So it helps you organize. So back to that original graph that I showed, 30 slides ago that shows, high intent versus research. This tool does a great job of pulling all this information, right? You can do this for your brand today. After this webinar, go to answerthepublic.com. It's a free tool. It'll blow your mind. At least it'll get you thinking and start with your customers. Try and reverse engineer what they're looking for. The other thing they do is prepositions, right? So keyword with or keyword like. And this is a great way to just do some of that initial research. The caveat is not everything they spit back is going to be relevant, but every time we've done this for our clients, we find new data, new information, new questions that we weren't even thinking of. And this is a screenshot here from that BuzzSumo tool. Lots of other ones out there, but as you're starting this process,
spend time doing the research and be curious, right? You're going to find stuff you weren't thinking about. The other thing I would suggest, so poll your salespeople, poll your customer service people. You know, as an agency, we ask all of our account managers and the sales and marketing team, what questions are you getting? So we do a lot of call tracking and voice analytics. We use CallRail and Dialogue Tech, lots of platforms out there in that space. But you can actually record and analyze all of your call center calls and look at a word cloud. Look at what are the questions that are actually getting asked to your sales team. So there's a lot of different ways, you know, not just looking at digital analytics, to figure out what are all these questions, what are people looking for, and aggregate that data as much as you can, because that's going to give you, again, a lot of this, there's so many opportunities that you could do here, but start with the big stuff. Start with answering those biggest questions. And that's going to, again, it can seem overwhelming, all the different opportunities here, but, you know, start with the data collection. So local search is another thing that is directly tied, especially as, you know, the high percentage of voice queries that are coming from mobile. Oh man, okay, so the local search ecosystem, I've always said looks like a bowl of spaghetti. This is the actual local search ecosystem slide. See, pretty similar? Yes, y'all agree? But understanding local search and all of the different local platforms and data aggregators out there, I could give a full webinar just on local search, but I think this graphic from Whitespark, I think, does a great job. If you actually follow the link on slide 87, it's an interactive map, and you can actually see all of the different data connectors. The moral of the story, or the takeaway here, is that any brand that has a local presence, the good news is there isn't something different that you need to do to optimize local specifically for voice or specifically for these voice apps. Again, back to that notion of good SEO is good voice search SEO. And certainly for a lot of brands, local is incredibly important. So the other thing, FAQs, right? So in the early aughts, every website had an FAQ. It was standard. It was table stakes. And it fell off. We didn't have it on our site. We're actually rebuilding a full FAQ database for the BFO right now. And we're also doing this on behalf of a lot of clients. And when you think about it, back to the structured, the rich results and featured snippets and quick answers, if you can answer the question, you can achieve that, that featured snippet on Google, even if you aren't ranking #1. So building out FAQ content, that's usually the typical next step that you want to take after you do all that research, is then answer those questions, right? And a lot of that also plugs into chatbots, right? So if you can come up with an inventory of the top 100 questions that customers are asking, you have the infrastructure to build a chatbot. And it's not that hard. There's a lot of great technology out there that has 80% or 90% of the heavy lifting covered. So as brands that are trying to think, how do I dip my toes into this? Microsoft Azure has the platform built. You don't have to build every piece of a chatbot. You just have to plug in the Q&A. And some of the machine learning will help customize that over time. But some of the things here are really not that complicated. So let's talk a little bit about schema, because when we talk about rich results and all the ways that Google is decoding the search results and providing more intelligent answers, the basis of that comes from schema. So this is a message. This was from January 9th that Google started emailing out, specifically saying, we want you to start optimizing your content for Google Assistant. Very rare that Google will come out and say that. So schema, and I'm not a technical guy. I can talk the talk, but it's very simply a new language. It's just a new kind of HTML that gets wrapped around your content. But it's ways that you can tag content that define what your page is about, whether it's about people, places, an event. Google has tried over the years, and they do a pretty good job of it, to decode what a website means. But if it's a product versus a service versus, again, an event, using schema tags, you can, the less Google has to guess, the more
confidence they have in the content on your site and understanding exactly what it is, the better opportunity you're going to have to actually show up in those rich results. Google has recently just launched a rich results test. I didn't put the link. I thought I put the link in here, but it's very easy to find. A little bit of warning to the group if you want to test this out. This is a Google tool. It is still very buggy. We found a lot of false positives and negatives. However, Google's doubling down on this. So if you want to test your content or test your site and see if you have schema implemented properly, if there's opportunities there, I would go to the rich results test. I guess I'd be happy to also offer up some schema audits if you guys want to reach out to me after the webinar. But this is really the basis of what brands need to be doing to position yourselves for those quick answers and featured snippets. I saw some questions about that. I'm happy to send around the URL for this tool. If you simply Google Rich Results Test, I'm sure you will find it as well. All right, so paid search opportunities, right? So nobody really knows how voice results are going to be monetized. But here's my little speech on paid search, and this is leveraging Google's micro moment slides. And there is a focus that we all have as marketers over to the right. So micro moments kind of explains the way people are interacting with mobile. It's no longer sitting down for 3 hours to do some heavy research. They're interacting with brands very quickly, getting bits and pieces of information at short sessions. And what us as marketers tend to focus on is over to the right, right? I want to buy. How do we get everybody to the bottom of the funnel and sell stuff? And what I would challenge you guys to think about is, the I want to know, or I want to go, I want to do moments, the things where someone isn't ready to buy something, but there's a lot of opportunities that marketers aren't really focusing on capturing customers early on in the cycle. So the other thing is there are a number of platforms. Again, hopefully the takeaway here is that it's not as hard as it sounds. But a lot of these platforms out there have done 80% of the heavy lifting for implementing a chatbot. So, integrating with all these different tools. It is this last slide is a screenshot from Microsoft. It is open game right now. If you think about all of the different platforms and how there isn't really a winner yet, but it's very easy to build a chatbot that integrates with Slack, with chat on your website, directly with Facebook Messenger, with Google Assistant. So again, do some research, find a platform, and get in the game, because it's not as hard and expensive as it may sound. And there's a lot of opportunities out there and platforms that do a lot of the heavy lifting. You really just need to add your data on top. So with that, I've got I'm going to be closing the presentation with I guess a few predictions on what's next, and then we'll take some questions. So thank you all for bearing with me, and apologize for the audio issues. I'm glad it is cleared up, and I don't know what happened. Such a great headset, but alas. So what's next? So chatbots get smarter and mainstream. So Bing has been doing this as well, but Google actually has chat integrated with AdWords as an ad extension. So we piloted this for a few clients. It's actually a very open ecosystem. It just works based on SMS, so it works across a lot of different platforms. Bing has actually built in chatbots directly into Bing Local and is rolling it out to Bing Ads as well. So if we look at the technology and the direction that Microsoft has doubled down on, they've invested heavily in AI and chatbots. I think they hired 10x the resources last year. So we expect to see a lot more there. And right now, it is on the cusp, but my prediction is this is going to be very mainstream. And it really is going to change the way a lot of brands interact with customers that don't want to go to your site and search for something, and they certainly don't want to call and go through an IVR. They want to chat and get answers. HubSpot, we do a lot of work with HubSpot, and they're seeing the same thing. The HubSpot CEO said at a conference I was at, like, nobody wants to fill out your forms anymore. They want to chat and get an immediate answer. So consumers are on their way there. I wouldn't say it's mainstream, but it is well on its way. Your website's going to be less important. As purchasing becomes easier, as people become more comfortable making purchases via voice and through chat or through Messenger, people don't want to go to your website, especially on mobile. They want to stay within the platforms that they're consuming content. They don't want to go to your website, and they certainly don't want to pull out a credit card and try and type in numbers on their mobile device. So the more you can connect with third-party payment services and become a brand that participates in the ecosystem outside of your website, that's going to be reducing friction, and that's where a lot of your customers are going to be expecting your customers in the next 3 to 5 years are going to be expecting that they can buy anything through any interface, via whether it's voice or chat or phone, nearly instantaneous. I'm actually giving a webinar with a partner of ours next month on marketing without websites or marketing beyond your website. Seems to be a very, very strong trend. PayPal is still the winner in terms of market share right now, but we expect that to evolve, and in general, customers are going to be making purchases wherever they are, not necessarily on your website. So in terms of how voice search is going to be monetized, some predictions, and this is what I think Amazon's working on, of promotion for similar products. So if you ask Alexa for Tide and they have a competitor in there with an offer, they could potentially monetize that. Monetize skills, so sponsored answers. That hasn't happened yet. I'm sure that is going to be very controversial once that if that answer becomes sponsored by a specific brand. Interactive audio and video ads, and then at the very end, data collection and audience targeting. This is one thing we say about every platform that you aren't paying for. If you aren't paying for it, then you're what's being sold. And when you think about, this is where the privacy folks get a little bit creeped out, but when you think about the amount of data that Google Assistant and Amazon is getting about their customers, they'll be able to, Amazon knows who I am, I'm signed into my Echo, they'll be able to recommend products within Amazon's platform based on what I've talked about or what I've asked about. So I think a lot of the monetization from some of these voice interfaces isn't necessarily going to be direct from advertising, but in gathering more audience data and more intent-based data. And the big thing, right? By 2020, it's going to be 50% of all searches over voice. So that's my motivation to get started. So a quick summary here: good SEO is good voice SEO. Hopefully, I covered some useful tactics and ideas today, and certainly is a lot to stay on top of as the space keeps evolving. Listen to what's happening in the marketplace, and it's moving so fast, you follow the leaders. You don't have to be the first one to do it, right? Let's spend some time looking at other brands, look at your competitors, and see who's built really cool things and build those for your brand and your customers, and jump in and get started with. I'm going to go to my thank you slide here, and we've got 4 minutes left for some questions, but I know we won't have time to get to all of them, and I'd be happy to take some questions over. Well, this is basically everything other than my social security number and address, if you'd like to get in touch and ask some additional questions. That link there, Talk Shop with Dan, that bit.ly link is something I've done at conferences where the that 5-minute hallway chatter is always difficult to do. So that's got my calendar. If you want to book up a time to talk quickly or answer follow-up questions, I'd be happy to. And with that, I'm going to take a couple of questions, but I know we're close to the end of the time here. So thank you all for your time. Very much appreciate it. Sorry for the audio issues early on, but glad that seems to be working better.
Great. Thank you so much. Great job of this. Again, to everyone, sorry about the audio issues. We have time for perhaps 1 or 2 questions. So let me just review which question to ask you. Hold on a second. I saw a question here about limited budgets. Here we go. What's the most effective procedure to integrate chatbots and AI technology into a business with limited budget?
Sure. So I'll recommend one platform, Microsoft Azure. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but they have a free chatbot tool. So plug in your content, plug in your FAQ, and they integrate with a lot of other sources. So that would be my recommendation. There's other options out there. But again, you don't need to build the infrastructure of a chatbot. It's really about layering in your content and your Q&A and leveraging a platform that's already out there. So you really only need to worry about that last 10%, not building it. You don't need a data scientist in-house in order to get in the game.
Great, thank you. Jeff asked about the Twitter post to tag Dan. Yes, you can tag Dan and the ANA for your chance to win a speaker. Another question from Jeff. The Chinese product, I think it was called Ding Dong, does it use Google ecosystem?
I don't believe so. It's all in Chinese. I actually saw a demo of it. And I don't know a whole lot other than it was the fastest growing last year, and it has a very funny name, and I like to put it in presentations. But there's a flood of smart speakers competing with them in the Chinese marketplace right now.
Great, thank you. And then one more question. What can you do to make the best technique to make your chatbot not sound like a chatbot?
Well, so in some cases you have control over the answers, right? So as you're inputting Q&A, feel free to add some personality to it. So that's one thing. I mean, there's a lot of the ways people use chatbots are very, very simple. Like for restaurants, they want to know, when does it close? Can I make a reservation? A lot of the questions people ask are not really in-depth. So even if it sounds like a chatbot, they're really just asking questions. But I would say, yeah, inputting some creative answers, because in a lot of cases, you know, the chatbots are only as smart as the humans that provide the data. So there definitely are some opportunities. I'm working on a whole video Q&A series to actually have a video answer to some of the most common questions we get from potential clients. So there's definitely opportunities to kind of put your brand and voice in play. It's not perfect, but there's definitely opportunities for that.
Great, thank you. Any last words for our attendees before we leave you?
No, just once again, I challenge everybody to take I covered a whole lot of content, and we'll be sharing the deck, but take one or two things that you think you can actually implement this quarter and test it out. So that's my motivational speech. Get in the game, get started now. It's not too late to be early. And thanks again for everybody's time, and feel free to get in touch and reach out. Always happy to talk shop, and we'll go from there.